Hello and welcome to this short recording that is again about relevant costs for decision making, and it looks at an example of making a particular decision based purely on the relevant costs. So there's a two-step process to relevant costing. What you want to do firstly is eliminate any costs or benefits that are not relevant, and then look at what you are left with, so the remaining costs and benefits from your decision that you can then use to decide whether you should go ahead with a particular decision or not. Costs that are relevant in one decision situation may not be relevant in another context. So therefore it's important that in each decision situation the manager examines the data and isolates the relevant costs. Relevant costs have three characteristics. They should be a future cost, they should be an incremental cost, they should be a cash flow. And remember also we need to look at any opportunity costs. So here we have Cynthia, who's a student, and she's going to visit her friend in Cornwall. She can drive or she can take the train. By car, it's 230 miles to her friend's apartment, and she's trying to decide which alternative is less expensive, and she's gathered the following information. So she's got some vehicle costs, which are based on 10,000 miles driven per year. So the first cost is the straight line depreciation on the car, which she's worked out to be 28p a mile. The cost of fuel, 10p a mile. The annual cost of insurance and tax, 0.138 per mile. Maintenance and repairs of the car, 0.065 per mile. And parking fees at the university, 0.036 per mile. So based on these figures, Cynthia has calculated the average cost per mile of using her car is 0.619. Where she's got some of these costs from, the depreciation, she's considered the original cost of the car minus its residue value and the expectation that it would have 5-year useful life. Her fuel, £6 a gallon, and she averages 60 miles to the gallon. And the parking fees, £45 per month for 8 months. She's also then provided some additional information that relates to this decision. So point number 7, if she uses the car, she's worked out that it's going to have a reduction in its resale value of 3p per mile. She's found out that it's going to cost her £104 on the train to Cornwall. She knows that the train will be far more relaxing, but she hasn't been able to put a value to that. She has a dog, and the dog's going to have to go into the kennel while she's gone, and that's going to cost £40. Obviously, if she drives, she'll have the car while she's in Cornwall, and there is a benefit to that, but there's also then the hassle of trying to park. Both of those she's been unable to put any values to. But what she does know is that the per day cost of parking her car in Cornwall is £25. So what we need to decide is, looking at all of these costs, which ones are relevant to her decision. So if we just go back And let's have a look at these. Number 1, the straight line depreciation on the car. That is not a cash flow. And what we need to think about is it a future cost? Is it a cash flow? Is it incremental? Depreciation is not a cash flow and therefore is not relevant. The cost of the fuel, so if she does drive to Cornwall, then she will incur the fuel cost. If she doesn't drive, she won't. So that's incremental. It'll happen in the future because she hasn't yet gone, and it's a cash flow. So the cost of the fuel is relevant. The annual cost of the insurance and tax. Well, she's already paid that, and therefore it's a sunk cost. In addition, it's not incremental because whether she drives the car to Cornwall or not, she still has to pay her annual insurance and tax. So we can eliminate that one from the decision. Maintenance and repairs. So that she's worked out that it's 0.065 per mile. So for every mile that she drives the car, then that's where her maintenance and repair cost is going to be. So therefore, if she does drive to Cornwall, that is going to be incurred. So it's an incremental future cost, so it is relevant. The parking fees at the university. Well, whether she goes to Cornwall or not, she has to park her car at the university. So that is not incremental, it's not future, so therefore it is not relevant. So far we only have cost number 2 and cost number 4 as relevant costs. So what about cost number 7? So the resale value of the car will drop by 3p per mile. So if she does drive to Cornwall, it will drop. If she doesn't drive to Cornwall, it won't. So it's incremental, it's future, it's a cash flow, so that is relevant. The round trip train fare, that's definitely relevant. The benefit of relaxing on the train. Again, that's relevant, but the problem is we haven't got a figure for it, so we can't include it in our decision. The cost of putting the dog in the kennel while gone to Cornwall. That is not relevant because whether she goes on the train or whether she drives, then that figure is going to be the same. So as her decision is, do I drive or do I take the train? In terms of that decision, £40 is not incremental. It's going to be incurred whichever decision she makes. The benefits of having a car, that is relevant, but we haven't got a figure, as is the hassle of parking. And finally, the per day cost of parking the car in Cornwall, that is relevant. Again, it's a future cost. It'll be incremental because if she does drive, she will incur it. If she doesn't drive, she won't incur it. And it will be a cash flow. So of all those costs that we started with, we've now managed to eliminate a number of them. And we can now look at whether she should drive or whether she should go on the train. Okay, so just a brief summary here. Cost of the car, not relevant. Cost of insurance, not relevant. Cost of the fuel is relevant. Cost of maintenance and repairs is relevant, but the university parking fee is not relevant. The decline in resale value is relevant. The round-trip train fare is relevant. Relaxing on the train is relevant. Kennel cost is not relevant. Cost of parking in Cornwall is relevant. The benefits of having a car and the problems with parking, both relevant, but as we've already identified, we have no values to them. So let's summarise what we've got. So we identified the fuel as being relevant. So it was 230 miles each way, so that's a 460-mile round trip at 10p a mile, £46 in fuel. The maintenance was 0.065 per mile, so 460 miles gives us £29.90. The reduction in resale value, 0.026 per mile, so multiply that by 460 miles, £11.96. And finally, parking in Cornwall 2 days at £25 per day is £50. So the total relevant costs of driving, £137.86. Whereas the round trip ticket on the train was £104. So taking into account the relevant costs only, so being just those costs that were relevant to her decision as to whether to drive or go by the train, we can see that it's currently financially better to take the train. However, Cynthia's now checked the train timetables, and she's realised that if she takes the train, she'll not be back in time to get to work. She misses 4 hours work at £8.50 per hour. So does this affect her decision? Well, what we have here is an opportunity cost. If she takes the train, she loses the opportunity to work 4 hours at £8.50 an hour. Now, opportunity costs are a relevant cost, so that needs now to be taken into consideration. It's only if she goes on the train that it's a relevant cost, because by going on the train she loses the opportunity of earning that money. So the cost of the driving has not changed, but the cost of taking the train ticket at £104, plus the loss of earnings, the loss of the opportunity to earn 4 hours worth of wages. That now makes the total cost of taking the train £138, compared to the cost of driving at £137.86. So she's currently just very slightly better off to drive. But hopefully this example is one that you could relate to, and you can see how we've considered just the relevant costs. And bear in mind what the decision was that she was making. The decision was not whether to go to Cornwall or not. She'd already made that decision. The decision she now needed to make was, should she drive to Cornwall or should she take the train to Cornwall? So the relevant costs were just those costs that related to driving or to taking the train. And we had to consider whether each of them were future costs, incremental costs, and cash flows. So I hope this example has been useful to you, and it will help you apply relevant costing principles in your decision making. Thank you for listening.